So, dyslexia, a highly misunderstood superpower. So, this is a bold statement. Now, it may feel uncomfortable to see dyslexia and superpower in the same sentence. They're not often put together, particularly in the education field. However, what I'd like to know from you guys, first of all, for those of you who are logged on through this, can you please let me know what dyslexia means to you? If you can put one or two words into your phone to say what dyslexia means to you. Those of you who aren't logged on through this, I'd be interested in if anyone would care to volunteer a word if this isn't quite working yet. Okay.
Sadly, we've got negative associations,
yes,
haven't we, about difficulty spelling, difficulty reading.
Absolutely, yes.
Possibly, I'm not sure.
Yes.
In the written word.
Yeah. That's absolutely usually how people understand dyslexia. Yes. Oh, different way of thinking. That's great. Frustrating, creativity, organisation skills. Yes, difficulty with organisation skills. Embarrassing. Yeah, I understand that. I'm dyslexic myself. And struggling reading. Yep. Difficult. I love the different way of thinking and the creativity, creative, so that's great. We're getting a mixture of, yes, processing, so difficulty with processing speeds, so there's a different, there is positive words and also the more negative associations which are more commonly understood. However, but what if you thought of it in a positive way? It's great that some of you already do. And wouldn't it be great if your children's teachers understood dyslexia as a positive learning difference and could help them to learn in the way that their brains process information properly, and that your child or children came to know dyslexia as a superpower. So this is me. So I love the symbol, the sign for me. Okay, so looking past the wonky fringe, courtesy of my mum, I think I must have been about 10 in this picture. Now, I struggled with spelling. I was dyslexic. I struggled with memory. I used to have a notebook on a string around my neck to make sure I remembered all the things I had to remember between home and school. I was very disorganised. I still am to a point, and always being told off for having a messy bedroom. And my teachers would always cover my writing in red ink. And the phrase "must try harder" was something that I knew only too well. But the thing is, I was trying harder. I was trying really hard, but the spelling rules just don't make sense. And there was lots of things that I was being taught that I just didn't see the point of. I didn't see why they were bothering teaching me this. I needed to know what the value of it was before I could learn it. Now, that's the thing with the dyslexic brain, is that you need things to make sense in order to learn, okay? Which is logical. It works, it makes sense. So anyway, I left school with very few points at A-level because I stopped going to my lessons because I found them rather pointless. And so eventually I discovered a love of psychology, and I went back and I studied and did a degree in psychology, a master's in child development and learning, and did some teaching, and then went on to specialise in this wonderful learning difference of dyslexia. So now, that's me. I'd like to know a bit about who you guys are. So now I've put on here, I've put teacher, parent of primary age child, secondary age child. Oh wow, 16 plus, just a generally interested person, or I am under 16. I appreciate that some of you will be a parent of more than one child that might fit into that, but if you just pick one of them, then that's great. Okay, so So that's really helpful for me to know, okay? Okay, so a number of you are here are parents, so that's great. Yeah, so for those of you who are interested, oh, okay, brilliant, we've got a full range. So I'm going to talk about the dyslexic brain. I'm going to talk about dyslexic thinking skills, dyslexia at work, how it impacts, the benefits of those dyslexic thinking skills with adults, dyslexia at school, and what you can do to help. Now, I've got limited time, I am aware of that, so, and a little bit about further information, but as I say, if you don't get time to ask your questions, come to the workshop in the view straight after this, or come and find me on my stand. So, moving swiftly on. Oh, by the way, I haven't stammered very much in this so far because I get a bit on a roll, but I do have a stammer, so there may be times that I get stuck on a word. So just to heads up, but keep focused. Anyway, dyslexia, as you may be aware, is a genetic learning difference that impacts the executive functions such as planning, managing time, processing information, and remembering information. And because I said earlier that the dyslexic brain needs things to make sense in order to learn, and the English language doesn't make sense. So that's a very very succinct way of seeing why dyslexia makes learning to read and spell so hard. So it affects roughly 1 in 5 people, but nobody really knows. There's a belief that up to 80% of children go through their entire education without being identified. But obviously those figures are unknown because they're not identified. So it's basically related to the way in which the brain is wired. The late Sir Jim Rose, he said the most widely accepted definition, which is it's a learning difficulty that primarily affects the skills involved in accurate and fluent word reading and spelling. Characteristic features of dyslexia, which are the ones that I look at when I'm assessing people, are difficulties in phonological awareness, verbal memory, and processing speed. I also look at other factors as well, but those are the 3 really key aspects that signify dyslexia. So the brain. The brain doesn't actually have any specific parts for reading from birth. So as we learn to read, the brain cells in numerous parts of the brain work together and they rearrange themselves and to be able to do the complex procedures involved in reading. I'll go into a bit more about the complexity of the process of reading in the workshop, but so the neurology reorganizes itself and new connections are made. Now there's been a fundamental difference in the brains of dyslexic and non-dyslexic people with regards to visual and auditory processing, memory and motor control, which are largely in the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe, and the cerebellum. But other aspects of the brain are involved as well. But I won't go into too much of that because I've got rather a lot information to convey. So that's how it works on a neurological level. That was a rather speedy way of looking at it. But let's think of it in layman's terms. Going back to the definition of dyslexia, Rose spoke about the difficulties with phonological awareness. Now, this refers to an implicit understanding of the way in which the structure of language works. And so it underpins reading and writing and spelling skills. Now, while non-dyslexics have a tendency to grasp phonological awareness concepts with relative ease and understand them on an implicit level, children with dyslexia need much more explicit explanations and greater opportunities to play with language. You probably all recognise this creature pictured here. I've represented the Gruffalo because one key aspect of phonological awareness is rhyme. Now, I cannot overemphasize enough the benefits of reading rhyming books, poems, being silly with rhyming words, and making them up. I'm the mother of 3 boys, and conversations in our house revolve a lot around farts and poo and wee. So we make up silly rhymes about those. So the sillier and more memorable you can make language, the better to grasp the attention and to make it memorable. And playing with tactile letters, making words on the floors with, there's some amazing magnetic foam letters that I'll talk about in my next talk, but playing with letters and moving them around and just being silly with it all, and just learning that reading and spelling is fun and playful, especially in the early days. One key factor, as I've said, the dyslexic mind needs things to make sense in order to learn. Unfortunately, our language does not make sense. Because of the many cultural influences, you've got Germanic, you've got French, you've got Latin, and you've got different regions of the country all saying different things. And the era of the printing press meant that some uniformity to the spelling rules acted to both clarify and confuse how people understand and know language in the written form. So this is how we've come to know our desperately, consistently inconsistent language. So for instance, let's take the sound or. Now you've got or. So or as in or. You've got or as in awful. You've got or as in door. You've got or as in more. You've got or as in source. You've got or as in walk. You've got or as in oars. You've got or as in for. You've got or as in war. Or as in water. Or as in court. And or as in thought. Now, this is entirely nonsensical. It is absolutely ridiculous, and it makes learning to read and spell really, really hard for a perceptive mind that notices these inconsistencies. And a lot of those ors there do not consistently make the sound or, and so in themselves. So it is insane. So I'm just thinking I will play this video. Hang on a second. So this just explains what would English be like if it were phonetically consistent. So
consider the following sentence. The same letter combination, O-U-G-H, appears repeatedly throughout the sentence, but the sounds are different every time. Though I coughed roughly and hiccuped throughout the lecture, I still thought I could plow through the rest of it. This incredible inconsistency can make English really hard to master for non-native speakers. But what if English were phonetically consistent? Let's consider the letter A. The letter A can represent a number of different sounds. Even ignoring its combined sounds, like AR or AW, you can get such diverse sounds as father, ape, and apple. Let's take the first of these, ah as in father. Now, ah is not alone in having different options for how it can be pronounced. Let's consider the vowel E. Neglecting combination sounds like ER, we can still produce some strange different pronunciations such as rewrite, elk, and one. Let's talk the first of these again. E as in rewrite. Of course, this means that silent E's at the end of words will now also be vocalized. Moving on, let's consider the vowel I. Ignoring combination sounds like IR or ING, this vowel can produce these sounds: likey, igloo, and deviati. Again, taking the first of these, we'll pronounce the I as in likey. Let's now turn our attention to the vowel O. Without combination sounds, we can style get a few options: pony, on, and one. Let's select the first one of these, O, as ein pony. Having no made these selections, we are left with only vowel.
Okay, because of time, I'm going to pause that there, but that gives you that shows you quite how crazy our language really is in terms of how to read and spell. And when children are taught that phonics and that letters and their sounds correspond with each other, and they're taught that up until that they do the phonics check, and then suddenly after the phonics check is gone, you suddenly say, ha, right, you thought that was right, now let's look at the rest of the language, and it just blows everything out of the water, and the inconsistencies come through in floods. So hang on a second. So now, going back to dyslexia, so that was phonological awareness. The next thing was processing speed. So now, with the way that the world is at the moment, everything is going really fast, and anything to do with the word slow, it has got now negative connotations. But slow processing speed, which is associated with dyslexia, or reduced processing speed, is not a negative thing. Now, if you imagine the mind like an office, so you've got the non-dyslexic's mind is a really, really spotlessly tidy office. Okay, now everything is filed away, the desk is clear, the filing system is all in order. You've got it's in a sort of very, very obvious alphabetical order, and and so things are very, very easy to find. So the person is asked a question about spiders, for instance, and so they go into their office, straight in, go to the animal filing cabinet, take out the spider's drawer, pick out the piece of paper about arachnids. Take out the animal's drawer. Sorry, I'm getting muddled up, see? They get the information really quickly is what I'm trying to say. I think that's my dyslexia getting myself confused. So they get the information really quickly. Their automation of information retrieval is really, really fast. And but the dyslexic mind, and this is a very general statement, and I don't mean to insult any dyslexic people here saying that you've got a messy mind, but my mind is not quite so logically organised, so that there may be some paperwork on the desk, for instance, some in the in-tray. The information may not be stored in quite such a logical way, so they might have seen a spider on holiday. So some of the information on spiders is in the things I found in France folder. There might be a spider under the bed, so there might be some information on spiders in the things I've got under my bed folder. And so when they're asked that question, they go up into their office and they take some time. They have to shuffle around the information, they have to find the information. But while they are finding that information, they have access to so much more stored information that the non-dyslexic people just don't have access to. So they come out with far more interesting and creative ideas. They draw links to different things, and that enables them to develop what's known as dyslexic thinking skills. Now, this is a term which has been taken up by the Oxford English Dictionary and LinkedIn, and It's approach to problem solving, accessing information and learning, often used by people with dyslexia, that involves pattern recognition, spatial reasoning, lateral thinking, and interpersonal communication. Now, I do have a video, but I'm not going to play it. Now, this is, if you get a chance, look at Made by Dyslexia. These are amazing people. They are, it's a charity, and they are doing fantastic things in the field of dyslexia. So find out and do have a look at this video. If you type in, this is Emily and Made by Dyslexia, you'll watch this video. It's really, really valuable to have a look at. So, but for now, I'm limited time, so I'll have to skip it. So for Made by Dyslexia, who made that video, looked deeper into dyslexic thinking skills and did a great deal of research and found that they link directly with the skills for work that are outlined by the World Economic Fund as being increasingly in demand in this modern world. So you've got accountability and discipline, you've got resilience and adaptability, that's easy for me to say, initiative taking, reasoning and problem solving, you've got leadership and social influence, critical thinking and analysis, collaboration and teamwork, creativity and originality, active learning, and adaptability. Now, there are still many challenges with adults who've got dyslexia, but the positives, the benefits of dyslexia and having a neurodiverse workforce in general is being recognised as being a real positive across industry sectors. So just to check you're all still with me, I'd like to ask you a quick question. This is a true or false. There's one false statement in here. So dyslexia helps you to communicate effectively and persuade, focus and adhere to the fine details, and come up with effective ways to solve problems. Now, one of these is not necessarily true. Can you, those of you who are doing this on your phone, you have to select the answer and submit. Okay. So, yes. Okay, so those of you, has anyone not done it yet? Those of you who've said the ability to focus on it is here to find details, that is generally false. But it depends on the level of focus required. It just means that it's much harder for dyslexic people to adhere to focus and adhere to the fine details. They're much more generally big picture thinkers. So how does this relate to helping children? So with the risk that the difficulties associated are reducing the processing speed, the phonological awareness, the impact it has on the reading and spelling, it can obviously have a detrimental effect on their mental well-being and their educational chances. However, so taking the proactive approach to recognizing dyslexic children early on is really key. The sooner they actually get properly assessed and support put in place, the difficulties can be helped tremendously as long as they're taught in a way that can make reading and writing make sense again and make it memorable. Obviously, you can't totally make sense of the English language, but you can make it, you can work out how to code it and develop strategies around it to remember it, and dyslexic children can learn just as well as non-dyslexic children. So what to do if your child is dyslexic? Well, the first thing to do is to speak to the teacher Now, I've written a helpful guide, which I'll show in the next slide, which will help with this, because I appreciate that as a parent myself, this can be difficult to know what to be looking for in the first place, to know how to approach the teacher, to know what questions to ask, to be taken seriously, and to get the constructive help afterwards. So the next thing to do is to obviously check that your child is up to date on their eyesight and their hearing. They need to have an eyesight test, an eye test within the last 2 years. You're probably familiar with coloured overlays and things like that. Now, this is actually not directly related to dyslexia. This is about visual stress with the contrast between the black ink on the white paper. So now this co-occurs with dyslexia, but it is separate from dyslexia. But obviously, if the child is straining to read, they're seeing words move, blur, double, or flash when they're reading, and it's producing headaches and general difficulty. They don't all have to have all of those symptoms, but if there's any difficulty around that, that needs to be investigated by a behavioural optometrist. So check that that's all okay, and get them assessed. Now, the assessment will give them not just greater self-awareness, but it will give you as their parents, it'll give you the teachers an understanding of how their brain processes information. And it will have a full individualized set of recommendations as to how to support that child in the different areas of difficulty, and how to teach them in a way in which they will learn in the way in which their brain works. So, hang on a second. And then once you've got that report, you go back to the teachers and you talk them through it, and you make sure that they're going to be putting into place the recommended support. And if you have any questions around that, please talk to me. So the other thing is be patient with your child. Try not to rush them. Discuss how silly the English language is, as I've just been talking about. Discuss strategies as to how to remember to spell really hard words. There's a fantastic app called Link-A-Lot, which is great for finding out different ways of approaching language, different ways of approaching words that they will not have experienced before. And I've even learnt to spell a few words from that. He does little animations that are funny and memorable of how to spell different words, and it's great. It's very positive. Encouraging a growth mindset, so letting the child know that they are more than capable of learning, and that their brain is like a muscle. The more they work it, the stronger and the more effective the learning will become. Encouraging reading as much as possible at home, not in a forceful way, but in as fun a way as possible, and playing with words and letters and poems, and making it multisensory if possible. So by that I mean drawing pictures, moving around the room, playing with different objects, putting words onto Lego, and just playing with it all. It depends obviously on the age of your child. Explaining the why, making sure they understand the purpose of what you're actually teaching them, because otherwise they're going to be like I was and think, well, what's the point in all this? I might as well go off and do something more fun. So as long, letting them know the relevance to them. Think of strategies to remember the different aspects of learning. Notice and talk about their strengths. I'll go on to that in just a minute. I'm aware of time. Also, key, understand that they are trying hard. They are trying really hard. They are working. Their brains are pushing through this, especially if they're trying to mask their difficulties on top of trying to push through the difficulty. So their brains are going to be really, really tired. I remember distinctly coming home every day just absolutely shattered and not really understanding why. So be patient in that way. I'll go through more specific ways of helping in the workshop in a little while. So if you're interested, this is the guide that I spoke about. You can scan this or talk to me about it later. So these, I've got this design as posters and bags. That's a little plug. So basically the dyslexia thinking skills that I talked about, this is a more child-friendly approach to it. So you've got inventing, influencing, storytelling, problem solving, analysing, empathizing, simplifying complex ideas, creating and seeing the big picture. So that's a positive way for dyslexic children to see dyslexia. Now I also have this video, which again I don't have time to play, but please look into it. See Dyslexia Differently by the British Dyslexia Association. This is a really good way of explaining dyslexia. It's very child friendly and so is well worth a look. So I'd like to know what you guys are thinking right now. What have you learnt? Please feel free to note down anything that you found interesting. We'll do a Q&A in just a sec. Sorry, it's been a bit rushed. If you have any questions later on, then please ask. Oh, hang on. How do I... Hang on. Oh. Okay, better insight into the dyslexic brain, its way of processing. What to do about getting my child assessed. Brilliant. How hard it must be for my child to meet others' expectations. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's exhausting. And having to nod and smile when the teachers are teaching something which makes absolutely no sense. And being sometimes frightened to actually say, look, hang on a minute, you actually said all was spelt like this. Overall better understanding, wonderful. How much dyslexic children learn from retrieving information? Brilliant. So thank you very much for feeding back. That's really, really helpful. Dyslexic thinking is determining the oxygen extinction. Yes. Processing written English writing isn't inherent function of the brain. Yes. Yeah. No, it's this whole learning difference I find absolutely fascinating, and I'm forever learning new things with it. So for those of you, sorry if you haven't had time to put your thing on there, but I'm just worried about the time. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put your hand up or type it into this box, and I'll get through as many as I can. Does anybody have any questions? If you don't, that's fine too. Yes.
Do you think employers are starting to recognise the strengths?
Absolutely, absolutely, very much so. If you look at the Made by Dyslexia charity, they do a lot of work with employers, and in fact, for anyone who's ever wanted to be a spy, GCHQ are actively seeking dyslexic people because of our fantastic problem-solving ability. So there could be a career change for some of you. So yeah, there's a lot of the big corporations are recognising it. Virgin, all of Richard Branson's companies, they've stopped looking at, they've taken off exam results of their hiring procedures, so they're not looking at exam results anymore. And HSBC are as well, I believe, though I hope they're still looking at maths for the banks. We can but hope. Anyone else have a question?
From what you've just said about the qualifications, Norfolk County Council have now stopped doing this as well.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, thank you. That's excellent.
A very big local employer.
Yes, yes.
The jobs on Norfolk County Council website now that they
Brilliant. That is a real step forward. That is super. Yeah, actually looking at the person rather than how much they managed to remember on that day. Yes, brilliant. Anybody else have any questions? Hang on. It says little sharp bits. Has anybody typed a question just out of interest before I? No? Okay, that's absolutely fine. Well, thank you very, very much for listening. I'm going to run to the view now to do the workshop. Feel free to come as well, or otherwise find me at my stall. So if you want any, I've got bookmarks and leaflets just there about having a dyslexia assessment. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.